Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Really quickly, I do want to go ahead and switch gears because I saw a story that caught my attention over the last couple of days. And I think, listen, week one is here. We want to get excited about the season ahead. We don't want to talk about all the negativity in college sports and the state of things and NIL and the transfer portal. But one thing that is always on the minds of pretty much everybody is realignment and expansion, right? Whatever you think of college sports, whatever you think of where things are, we know that this is not the final destination. I think we all kind of feel like eventually the Big Ten and the SEC are going to expand more. They're going to take more teams. And eventually we're going to get like an upper tier of college football that's, 36, 40, 48 teams, something like that, 20 to 24 teams in each conference. And that's going to kind of be the best college football. And then there will be a tier below it. It used to be a 1AA, then it was FCS. And I think a lot of these kind of second tier programs, even in the power conference level, might not survive. Is Boston College still considered a power conference team 10 years from now? Who knows? Cal, Stanford, some of the bottom of the Big 12, whatever. Well, I bring it up because, again, this is a topic that is a constant point of conversation. And I saw something very interesting. Brett McMurphy, now at On3, basically over the last couple of days, I don't know if he got this quote directly from somebody at Maryland, but, listen, it's behind a paywall. Whatever. My spiel on paywalls. I'm not going to disrespect people who are behind paywalls. I do think we're now at a point where everything doesn't have to be behind a paywall. I see people's my 5 biggest stories of the season, pay for it. And I'm like, don't know that it needs to be behind a paywall. Anyway, Brett McMurphy either talked to somebody from Maryland or at least, found a quote somewhere where Maryland basically said that they believe another round of realignment is coming. The Big Ten is not done expanding. And so we got an interesting quote about the 2 schools that could be next in realignment, not only for the Big Ten, but is it possible the SEC would be interested as well? We always talk about Florida State and Clemson. They might not be the 2 schools that people are most interested. Let's go ahead and give it a listen.
I don't know about you guys. I was surprised he didn't say 24 because I think that kind of what Andy laid out. I think we're going to be 20 or 24 with the SEC and the Big Ten. The question is, what is going on with the Big 12 and the ACC, and are they going to be allowed to be part of that group? I think it's very clear. Andy, you want to speculate recklessly about who it'll be? Look, after I reported that this morning, I immediately got a text from someone within the SEC and basically said what I've been thinking, and that is North Carolina and Virginia will be highly contested between both conferences. And where they end up, look, no one knows. It's impossible to say. But I do really believe that they are the most attractive to both leagues. And we'll have to see what happens. Again, 5 years is a long way off. 2 years is, light years way off. But speculate recklessly.
And so there is Brett McMurphy with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman on On3. Andy and Ari Show, I believe, is the name of the show, talking about realignment, talking about the fact that it's not Florida State and Clemson that are most coveted by these other conferences, but that the Big Ten and the SEC would actually most covet Virginia and North Carolina. Okay. So first of all, let me say this. First of all, I think we should even backtrack and kind of give timelines and all of that. And what I would say about it is that I think this is an important caveat, an important note. Okay. Is that in my opinion, no realignment is going to happen for another couple of years. Okay. So 2030 is kind of the year that everybody's got to circle. And I think Brett McMurphy might have even referenced it in that in that interview, basically saying like, look, nothing is really going to happen until 2030. And for people who don't understand why, that is when the buyouts go down quite a bit for the schools in the ACC. The ACC actually recently kind of agreed to like a pseudo restructuring of things over the last couple months. And that was basically because Florida State was suing. Florida State was trying to get out. Clemson was trying to follow suit. And basically the ACC kind of agreed to a restructuring. They're giving Florida State a little bit more money, on and on. But basically, it ties everybody into this conference until at least 2030. So nothing is going to happen before 2030. But as far as North Carolina and Virginia are concerned, I've been telling you this, that story made its rounds. And it, by the way, during media days, there was a report that the SEC is eyeing North Carolina. I'll just be real. It makes for great headlines. These are not new pieces of information, okay? And why would the schools be interested? First of all, I think what you have to understand is at this point in realignment, here's the question and here's the conversation you have to ask, is what are schools adding to your conference, okay? And this is an important caveat. By the way, I am wearing my Carolina baby blue Hawaiian shirt. The Hawaiian shirt's more to celebrate because it's the first day of college football, the first day of week one. But I just bring it up because, we talk about realignment, I think everybody just assumes it's going to be the biggest brands, Clemson, Florida State, maybe Miami, whatever. But here's the truth, is what are you bringing to a conference, and are you adding value in a place that they don't have it, right? And so with Florida State and Clemson, this sounds crazy. I don't know how much value that they really add to the SEC in their current TV contract. Now, Texas and Oklahoma did. Texas is maybe the biggest brand in college football, certainly top three along Notre Dame and Ohio State. But they also brought in two completely different markets that were not in the SEC at the time, Texas and Oklahoma. Okay. That's, probably 25, 30 million people. I don't have the dynamics or, the demographics off the top of my head, but they added a different market that was not there before. You add Florida State and South Carolina, they don't really add all that much, and they don't really alter the TV contract all that much because Florida is already covered. South Carolina is already covered with the Florida Gators and the South Carolina Gamecocks. And so for the SEC to expand, it has to make sense and it has to create more revenue for them. And I'm just not sure that South Carolina or that Clemson and Florida State do. At the same time, what does become interesting is that I think North Carolina and Virginia would create more revenue. One, they're contiguous states, which means they're part of that SEC footprint, obviously bordering current SEC states. But two, the SEC doesn't have a presence in North Carolina. They don't have a presence in Virginia. And Virginia and North Carolina add value to those specific conferences. Now, as far as the Big Ten is concerned, the Big Ten, of course, is just trying to add schools that make sense from an athletic standpoint, but also from an academic standpoint as well. The Big Ten, we all know, leaders and legends. I mean, their big thing in expansion has been, is it the right, not only athletic fit, but academic fit as well. They've been, for the most part, pretty cautious. Maryland is a good academic school when they were added. Rutgers brought that New York City market. Was it overrated? Was it underrated? I don't know, but Rutgers is a pretty good school as well. And then those West Coast schools, USC is a very good school. UCLA is a very good school. Washington is a very good school as well. Oregon brings some academic prowess, but certainly a very good football program as well. So to me, I think it's interesting. I do think it is worth noting again. I think realistically, there will be no realignment until probably 2030 at the earliest. But I do think North Carolina and Virginia are the schools that both leagues are going to covet for a little bit of a different reason. Again, I think they both add something to the current TV package of each of the conferences already. But then I think beyond that, once you get beyond that, you start to realize that, wait a second now, they add stuff academically, they add stuff athletically. They're a part of the country that we're not currently in. And I'll also add this too, as we head into week one of the Bill Belichick era at North Carolina. I think that's part of the reason Bill Belichick was hired at North Carolina. They want to have a good football program, which will make them more attractive when that next round of realignment comes. I saw, by the way, Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports actually put out an article earlier in the day, basically insinuating just that, is that there's a lot of reasons Belichick came back to college. there's a lot of excitement. But one of the big reasons from North Carolina's side of things, the value that they thought that Bill Belichick brought was the fact that he helps elevate North Carolina football. And if you can get him maybe an ACC, listen, 2030 is a long way away, but it really isn't. Let's say Bill Belichick gets you a singular ACC championship, maybe 2 trips to the playoff. All of a sudden, you become a much more appealing property for the ACC, for the SEC or the Big Ten going forward. So anyway, I don't want to oversell this story. I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. What I do think is these realignment conversations are constantly going on. I remember the day Texas and Oklahoma left for the SEC and the first Clemson, Florida State rumor started. People were like, Florida State and Clemson aren't going anywhere. It's like, of course they're not going anywhere now. Doesn't mean that they're not having conversation. So I thought it was an interesting story from Brett McMurphy. Thought it could signify the next wave that's coming. But just thought it was interesting here on a Friday as we get ready for week 1. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, a couple more of your questions. Let's see here. By the way, Luke just brings up a point about this realignment stuff. North Carolina lawmakers have tried to tie UNC and NC State together in realignment. I imagine Virginia lawmakers would do the same with Virginia and Virginia Tech. Luke, it's a great point. The only thing that I would say about that is that historically was a huge deal. And then we kind of saw in the last round of realignment, it's kind of a survival of the fittest. It's Darwinism, right? Oklahoma, by the way, if you remember, about 15 years ago, we were going to get a Pac-16. Remember that? It was going to be Texas, Oklahoma. I believe Texas Tech maybe was the third Texas team, and then Oklahoma State. And basically, part of it, the reason it didn't happen was because Oklahoma wasn't going to leave without Oklahoma State. Well, guess what? Oklahoma had a chance to go to the SEC with Texas. They did it. Oregon and Washington had a chance to go to the Big 10, without Oregon State and Washington State. This stuff has changed. And I think if Virginia has to make a move to protect themselves, if North Carolina has to make a move to protect themselves, they'll do just that.